Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unpack your sources to bring you the most vital insights.
That's right.
In a world absolutely awash with information, our mission, really, is to offer you a shortcut, a way to get truly well-informed.
Yeah, cutting through the noise.
Exactly. Complete with, surprising facts and hopefully just enough humor to keep you hooked.
Hopefully.
Today, we're embarking on a really fascinating deep dive. We're looking into three interconnected concepts that feel more crucial than ever for navigating life's challenges. Vulnerability, resilience, and well-being. These aren't just, abstract ideas floating out there somewhere.
Not at all.
Our sources show they're fundamental aspects of the human experience, things that can be understood, cultivated, and applied to really transform your life.
Yeah, whether you're facing something personal, like a setback, or even dealing with a global crisis, or maybe you're leading a team.
Right, leading a team through uncharted waters. These apply everywhere.
Precisely. And we have a compelling stack of material today. We're pulling from some rigorous academic research looking at psychological well-being during the COVID-19 pandemic in South Africa, for example.
Okay, that sounds intense but relevant.
It is. And we also have insightful reviews of literature on self-compassion, plus some really transformative perspectives on the power of vulnerability, in our personal lives and also in our professional lives.
So a real mix of sources.
A great mix. Our aim is to extract those core nuggets, those key insights, and show you how these elements don't just help us survive the tough stuff.
Right, not just surviving.
No, they truly empower us to flourish, to actually thrive. Okay, let's unpack this.
Okay, so let's start by getting a really clear picture. What do these three powerful concepts actually mean? Resilience, well-being, vulnerability. We hear these terms thrown around a lot, almost casually sometimes.
Yeah, they're buzzwords almost.
Exactly. But what do they truly entail? What are we really talking about when we use these words?
Well, what's fascinating here, I think, is how each concept, while distinct, in its own right, actually lays groundwork for the others.
Okay, so they're connected.
Deeply intertwined. They aren't just separate pillars standing in isolation. Let's break them down, maybe starting with resilience.
Sounds good.
Resilience. So resilience, it pertains to an individual's ability to withstand, adapt, and crucially recuperate from adversity and stress.
So like bouncing back.
Bouncing back is the common phrase, yeah. But think of it not just as avoiding hardship altogether, because let's face it, life throws curveballs at all of us, right?
Absolutely. No escaping that.
It's more about that profound capacity to bounce back, or maybe even to bounce forward, to grow stronger through the process.
Bounce forward, I like that. Growing from it.
Exactly. Now, for a long time, our understanding of resilience was, well, quite rigid. Earlier studies, you see, often described resilience as this inherent trait.
Like you either had it or you didn't.
Pretty much. Something you were born with. It was seen as a fixed characteristic, almost like, your eye color or something. Some people were just naturally tough, blessed with this unbreakable spirit, and others, well, they just weren't.
So it was almost like a lottery of personality, where you either won the toughness gene or you didn't. That sounds a bit limiting, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And thankfully, contemporary research profoundly challenges that static view. This newer research, it shows that resilience is actually guided by a whole host of factors beyond just a person's individual character.
Like what kind of factors?
Well, think about cultural influences, the environmental support systems you have access to, your community resources. All of these play a really significant role.
So it's not just about what's inside you, but also what's around you.
Precisely. And this crucial shift in perspective led to this powerful notion that resilience isn't a fixed trait at all. It's a dynamic process.
A process. Okay.
Yeah, researchers like Michael Unger, for instance, have really solidified this idea. They define resilience as this dynamic interaction between an individual and their environment, which then results in positive adaptation.
That implication is truly profound if it's a process. Well, it means it's something we can actively cultivate.
Right.
It's not about being stuck with what you were born with. We can actually develop this capacity.
Exactly. The idea that resilience can be fostered and enhanced is incredibly empowering. It means it's a dynamic capacity, something that can be learned, practiced, and strengthened over time.
Okay.
It's often considered an ordinary but powerful form of strength, which I think is such a wonderful way to put it.
Ordinary but powerful. I like that. It makes it accessible.
Totally. It's not reserved for superheroes or, only those who've overcome some extraordinary trauma. It's a capacity that resides within everyone, just waiting to be nurtured.
So when you face a setback, Maybe a project fails at work, or a relationship hits a rough patch.
Yeah.
Resilience isn't pretending it doesn't hurt.
No, absolutely not. It's about acknowledging the pain, right? Learning from the experience, figuring out how to move forward, maybe with a new strategy or a deeper understanding of yourself. It's fundamentally about adapting.
That makes so much sense. Adapting, not just enduring. Okay, so if resilience is about that adaptive process of bouncing back or bouncing forward, what about well-being?
Ah, well-being.
We often equate that with just being happy, don't we? Like a constant state of grinning, maybe. But it sounds like our sources suggest it's much deeper, more multifaceted than that.
You're absolutely right. It's far more complex than just, a fleeting feeling of happiness. Well-being is a really intricate phenomenon.
Intricate how?
Well, no single theory can fully explain it adequately because it's shaped by so many interconnected factors: our biology, our psychology, our social connections, our environment. It's a big web.
Okay.
So while happiness, typically refers to that subjective emotional state characterized by positive feelings like the joy you feel when your favorite team wins, maybe.
Sure, or hearing a great song.
Exactly. Psychological well-being is a much broader, multidimensional construct. It's about a more enduring, pervasive sense of thriving. Not just feeling good, but doing well.
So it's not just about a temporary mood boost.
Yeah.
It's a fuller sense of life satisfaction.
Yeah.
And purpose, maybe.
Precisely. Martin Seligman, who's a really prominent figure in positive psychology, he identifies these core elements of well-being. Things like experiencing positive emotion, yes, but also genuine engagement in activities.
Engagement, like flow state.
Kind of, yeah, being absorbed. Also, nurturing positive relationships with others, cultivating a sense of meaning in life, and achieving a sense of accomplishment, feeling competent.
Okay, that's a lot more than just happy.
It is. And researchers Ryan and Donsey, expanding on this, define well-being as a process of living and functioning well and truly reaching one's full potential.
Living and functioning well.
Exactly. Our sources highlight two distinct yet interconnected dimensions of well-being that are really crucial to understand.
Two dimensions.
The first is hedonic well-being. Now, this is what most people initially think of when they hear happiness.
Right, the pleasure principle.
Exactly. It's a subjective experience primarily related to pleasure and positive sensations. It's centered on maximizing positive emotions and minimizing negative ones.
Like enjoying a delicious meal or watching a fun movie.
Perfect examples. Or unwinding on a sunny beach. It's about the satisfaction of immediate desires, feeling good in the moment, seeking pleasure, comfort, enjoyment.
Get it. Hedonic. Feeling good. What's the other one?
The second, often deeper and more enduring dimension, is eudaimonic well-being.
Eudaimonic. Okay, spell that one out a bit.
Eudaimonic. It refers to finding meaning and purpose in one's life. It's about living well in a really profound sense. Actively pursuing a life that aligns with your values, your deepest self.
Ah, so less about fleeting pleasure, more about fulfillment.
Exactly. This dimension includes experiences that promote self-actualization, finding a deep personal meaning, striving towards and reaching your goals, and that profound sense of psychological well-being that comes from realizing your potential.
Okay.
This results in feelings of meaning, fulfillment, and flourishing. It links directly back to Aristotle's ancient ideas about eudaimonia, living a life of virtue and excellence.
So it's not just about feeling good, but about being good and doing good, maybe, in a purposeful way.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
For instance, you might be volunteering for a cause you care deeply about.
Right.
It might be challenging, right? Maybe even exhausting sometimes. Not very hedonic in that moment.
Definitely not always pleasurable.
But it provides that deep sense of purpose and fulfillment, and that contributes significantly to your eudaimonic well-being.
That distinction is incredibly helpful. So hedonic is the feel good in the moment, and eudaimonic is the meaning good. The kind that leaves a lasting sense of fulfillment, even if the process isn't always easy.
You got it.
And how does something like positive mental health fit into this broader picture of well-being?
Well, according to recent research, positive mental health encompasses these intersecting threads that build an individual, especially during times of distress and difficulty.
Intersecting threads.
Like strength.
Yeah, think of them as interconnected strengths or resources. Internal resources like self-esteem, optimism, coping skills, and external resources like strong social support networks or access to education or healthcare.
Okay.
It acts as a key asset and resource for overall well-being. These threads, these protective factors, they're predictive of improved outcomes. They essentially help us maintain our mental equilibrium and thrive even when life gets challenging.
Like having a robust internal scaffolding, something that helps you stand strong when things get windy.
That's a perfect analogy, a strong internal scaffolding. Okay, so we've got resilience as this dynamic process of adapting and bouncing back, even bouncing forward, and well-being as a multifaceted state of flourishing, covering both immediate pleasure and deeper purpose, supported by positive mental health. Now, let's tackle vulnerability.
Ah, yes, vulnerability.
Brené Brown's work is just pivotal here, isn't it?
Yeah.
She truly redefines it from how many of us, I think, have been conditioned to perceive it.
Absolutely. Her groundbreaking research powerfully highlights that we are often conditioned, really from a young age, to view vulnerability as a form of weakness.
Definitely feels that way sometimes, like something to hide.
It's deeply ingrained in our societal narratives, isn't it? Strength, stoicism, unwavering resilience, those are celebrated, while vulnerability is often perceived as fragility or maybe emotional overexposure, even a liability.
Yeah, you see it everywhere.
Think about common examples. The societal pressures, often on men, to suppress any outward displays of emotion, be the strong, silent type who never cries or shows fear.
Right, man up.
Exactly. Or for women, the expectation often is to be emotionally caretaking and nurturing, but paradoxically discouraged from showing their true emotional depth if it doesn't align with external expectations of being, always together or the rock for everyone else.
So everyone's kind of expected to put on a brave face.
Pretty much. This pervasive conditioning creates this deep-seated tendency to armor up against vulnerability. We construct these elaborate emotional defenses to protect ourselves from perceived exposure, from shame, from judgment.
It's like we're taught from a young age to put up these invisible walls, isn't it? To hide anything that might be seen as imperfect or less than ideal. And the consequence of that is, what? Disconnection.
Profound disconnection, yes. We might protect ourselves from potential pain, sure, but we also inadvertently cut ourselves off from genuine connection, from creativity, and from true courage. But Brown really challenges these views. She proposes this profound paradigm shift.
Okay, what's the shift?
She defines vulnerability not as weakness at all, but as a fundamental aspect of the human experience that is integral to courage and authenticity.
Integral to courage, not the opposite of it.
Exactly. This is where her work truly transforms our understanding. It almost flips the script on our conventional wisdom. Her true definition involves the willingness to expose oneself to uncertainty, to risk, and to emotional exposure.
Okay.
It is, in her powerful words, the courage to show up and be seen even when there are no guarantees.
Courage to show up and be seen even when there are no guarantees.
Wow.
Okay.
That's a powerful line. It really captures the essence, doesn't it?
It really does.
It's not just about being open. It's about being brave enough to be open without knowing if you'll be accepted or rejected.
Precisely. And this is where it gets really interesting. Brown asserts that vulnerability is the birthplace of creativity, innovation, and change.
The birthplace? How so?
Well, think about it. If you're not willing to put yourself out there with a new idea, to risk failure or judgment, how can you truly innovate?
You can't really. You just stick to the safe path. Exactly. How can you create something new that hasn't been done before? It's the emotional risk and uncertainty inherent in daily life that fuels all of these profound human experiences. It gives rise to courage.
Okay.
And not just the kind of heroic grand-scale courage we see in movies, someone running into a burning building.
Right, not just that Hollywood stuff.
No. Brown is talking about the everyday courage. The courage it takes to initiate a difficult conversation with a friend or family member because it's needed.
Yeah, that takes courage.
The courage to express love to someone you care about deeply, even when it feels scary and you don't know if it will be reciprocated.
Definitely scary.
The courage to admit failure or to say I was wrong to a colleague or a partner. The courage to share transparently with another person, even when you feel exposed and unsure how they'll react.
So vulnerability isn't the opposite of strength.
It's the essential pathway to it. It's the act of leaning into discomfort to find something deeper, something more authentic.
Okay, so these concepts aren't just abstract ideas sitting in silos. They clearly build on each other, interact, fuel one another.
Aha.
How does this actually work together in real-world scenarios? What does it look like when they interact?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? How do these human capacities, resilience, well-being, vulnerability, build upon one another? Our sources provide some really fascinating insights into these symbiotic relationships. Let's look at resilience and well-being first.
Oh.
And specifically, let's look through the lens of lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic. That provided a stark, challenging, real-world laboratory for studying human adaptation.
Right, a global stress test, essentially.
Exactly. We have a compelling South African study that shed significant light on this interaction. It was conducted between June and July 2022.
Okay, relatively recent then.
Yes. Using a cross-sectional survey design, it included 631 respondents across all 9 provinces of South Africa. The context here is crucial.
The pandemic context.
Yes. It profoundly altered daily life globally, didn't it? Increased uncertainty, widespread fear, illness, tragic loss of life.
An incredibly stressful time for everyone.
Absolutely. South Africa, in particular, faced one of the world's highest infection rates early on. They responded with prompt, decisive actions, including an early nationwide lockdown. This created an immense rise in various stressors, financial, social, health-related, and significantly reduced people's access to their usual protective factors like social gatherings or community support.
So a period of immense challenge, a real crucible, as you said, to observe how people cope.
Precisely.
So what did the researchers focus on measuring in this study? How did they capture resilience and well-being in that context?
They used a battery of validated instruments, standardized tools to get a comprehensive picture. For resilience, they used the Connor-Davidson Resilience Scale, the CDRISC-10. It's a widely accepted measure for that capacity to bounce back.
Okay, the CDRISC-10.
For general well-being, they use the World Health Organization Well-Being Index, the WHO-5. It's a quick, reliable 5-item scale to assess overall mood and well-being.
Simple but effective.
Yes. Positive mental health was measured with the PMHS. And crucially, spiritual well-being, a factor often overlooked, but which proved very significant here, was assessed with the FACET-SPE-12.
FACET-SPE-12. What does that measure specifically?
It looks specifically at meaning, peace, and faith, those aspects of inner life.
Meaning, peace, and faith. Okay, so what did the findings reveal? How did these different aspects connect and influence each other during that incredibly stressful time?
The key findings, using statistical analysis, specifically Spearman's Re, to look at correlations, were quite illuminating. First off, the study found a strong correlation between resilience and overall well-being during the pandemic.
Strong correlation, so they move together.
Yes. It suggests that the more resilient someone was, the better they were at adapting and bouncing back, the better their overall sense of well-being tended to be, even amidst those challenges. It's a powerful indication that these two really go hand in hand.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
What's particularly powerful and what the study highlighted as practically significant was the very strong positive association found between resilience and spiritual well-being, specifically in the areas of meaning and peace.
Meaning and peace. How strong was that connection?
The correlation coefficient was 0.580. In statistical terms, that's a remarkably robust connection.
Wow. Almost 0.6. That's high.
It is. Imagine 2 gears turning. When one turns significantly, the other moves almost perfectly in sync. It means that for every substantial increase in a person's sense of meaning and inner peace, there was a very robust corresponding increase in their resilience.
So having that inner compass, that sense of purpose or tranquility.
It seems to be an incredibly powerful resource for weathering storms. It helps individuals find a foothold even when external circumstances are chaotic.
I can see that. If you feel life has meaning, maybe it's easier to push through hardship.
That seems to be the case. For many respondents, this might have looked like finding purpose in caring for family or engaging in community support, or maybe simply finding inner calm through spiritual practices amidst all that global uncertainty.
That makes profound intuitive sense, doesn't it? If you feel like your life has a deeper purpose or you can find moments of peace within yourself, it's far easier to endure difficulty and not be completely overwhelmed by it.
Exactly. There was also a positive association that leaned toward practical significance between resilience and positive mental health. The correlation there was 0.382.
Still quite strong.
Yes, it implies that higher positive mental health correlated with higher resilience. Our mental resources are clearly key components of our ability to adapt.
Makes sense.
Similarly, resilience and faith, which is another component of that spiritual well-being scale, also showed an association leaning toward practical significance at 0.361.
Faith, too. Interesting.
So having higher faith, whether that's a specific religious faith or perhaps a broader faith in humanity or the future, was also strongly linked to higher resilience. These aren't just abstract connections. They seem to be tangible aspects that provided real solace and strength.
Okay, so meaning peace, faith, positive mental health, all strongly linked to resilience. What about the general well-being measure, the WHO-5?
Interestingly, the study found a practically non-significant association there. The correlation between resilience and general well-being, as measured by the WHO-5, was only 0.241.
Lower than the others. Why do you think that is?
Well, it suggests that while resilience strongly connects to those deeper, more enduring aspects of well-being, like meaning, purpose, spiritual peace, it's linked to a more superficial or generalized feeling of well-being, like just feeling cheerful day to day, might be more nuanced or less direct.
So resilience helps more with the big picture stuff than just the daily mood.
It seems that way. It highlights that well-being isn't just about feeling good in a general sense, especially during hard times. It might be more about finding that deeper meaning even amidst the adversity.
That's a really important nuance.
The bigger picture from this South African study is crystal clear. The elevation in resilience observed was instrumental in augmenting psychological well-being during the pandemic.
So resilience boosted well-being.
Significantly. It powerfully suggests that interventions aimed at enhancing individual and community well-being could really benefit from incorporating elements that bolster resilience, especially during times of global adversity like a pandemic.
So focusing on building resilience could be key to helping people cope.
Absolutely. The takeaway for you, the listener, is that individuals who cultivate a strong sense of meaning and purpose in life and/or experience inner peace are remarkably more likely to exhibit higher levels of resilience. And spirituality, particularly faith, emerged as a vital thread, providing solace and strength when maybe other resources were scarce.
So even amidst widespread crisis and hardship, people found profound ways to adapt and cope, often by drawing on these deep internal resources like meaning and faith. What were the average scores like for the South African population in this study? How resilient were they overall?
It's interesting. The respondents, on average, showed a moderate level of resilience. The mean score on the CD-RISC-10 was 25.39 out of a maximum of 40.
Moderate. So not super high, but not low either.
Exactly. It's above the midpoint, suggesting that despite the significant challenges, health concerns, social isolation, huge financial instability for many, the population demonstrated a noteworthy capacity to cope and bounce back. And this finding was actually consistent with other studies done during the pandemic using the same scale elsewhere in the world. Similar moderate scores popped up.
Okay, so a moderate resilience level generally. What about the other measures? Mental health, meaning and peace.
Well, the picture was a bit more nuanced there. Their positive mental health was rated as moderately low, with a mean score of 17.01 out of 40.
Moderately low.
And there was a notable reported lack of meaning and peace, with a mean score on that part of the spiritual well-being scale of only 14.86.
So resilience was okay, but people were struggling with finding meaning and peace, and their overall mental health was lower.
That seems to be the depiction. It's not saying people were completely without purpose, but that sense of deep, abiding meaning and peace was definitely challenged during that time. On the other hand, faith seemed to provide a significant source of solace. The average faith score was 10.83, which is relatively high for that subscale, indicating that spiritual beliefs were a particularly strong protective factor for many.
So faith was a key anchor for resilience, even when meaning and peace felt elusive.
It seems so. It paints this picture of a population that, while resilient in their ability to adapt functionally, was still grappling with significant emotional and existential challenges during the pandemic, and they found particular strength and comfort in their spiritual beliefs and communities. It really highlights how resilience isn't just about gritty determination, it's also about finding those external and internal anchors.
That's incredibly insightful. It paints such a vivid picture of human coping mechanisms under pressure. Now let's shift gears slightly, but stay connected. Let's talk about vulnerability, shame, and courage.
Yes, back to Brené Brown's territory.
She really unpacks the emotional landscape here in a way that just resonates with so many of us. Tell us more about the role of shame specifically. It sounds quite insidious.
It really is. Brown delves deeply into shame, defining it as that intensely painful belief or feeling that we are fundamentally flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging.
Fundamentally flawed. That's harsh.
It is, and it's different from guilt. Guilt is about doing something wrong. I made a mistake. Shame is about being something wrong. I am a mistake.
That's a critical distinction. Doing versus being.
Huge difference. Shame is a feeling that can be incredibly isolating, like carrying this dark secret. And Brown asserts that shame absolutely thrives in secrecy and silence.
How so?
When we keep our perceived flaws, our mistakes, our failures, our imperfections hidden, when we deny them or bury them deep down, shame actually grows stronger. It becomes more debilitating. It whispers to us, You are alone in this. You are uniquely broken. No one else feels this way.
So the secret is shame's superpower. It uses that isolation to gain strength.
Precisely, and this leads us directly to the crucial link between shame and vulnerability. Allowing oneself to be vulnerable, to show up authentically, inherently opens up the possibility of experiencing shame.
Because you might be rejected or judged for what you reveal.
Exactly. It's a risk, a leap of faith. When you share a deeply personal story or admit a fear or put your authentic self out there, there's always that chance that someone might judge you, dismiss you, or reject you. And that can trigger that painful feeling of unworthiness, of shame.
Right. So vulnerability feels dangerous because of the potential for shame.
Yes. However, and this is the crucial pivot, it is precisely through this willingness to risk shame, to step into that emotional exposure and uncertainty, that true courage is born.
Risking shame leads to courage.
Brown powerfully emphasizes that courage is not the absence of fear, nor is it the absence of shame. It is the ability to move forward in spite of them.
Okay. Moving forward, despite the fear and potential shame.
It means taking those emotional risks, bearing our true selves even when our inner critic is screaming at us to hide, to play it safe.
And what's the antidote to shame then? If secrecy fuels it, what starves it?
Connection, empathy. Brown asserts that sharing our stories openly with trusted individuals strips shame of its power. It transforms it from a source of isolation into an opportunity for connection.
Sharing with trusted people, that caveat seems important.
Very important. It's not about oversharing with everyone, but when we dare to talk about our shame, our imperfections, our struggles, with people we trust, people who have earned the right to hear our story, we often find something profound.
What?
That we are not alone. Others can relate to our experiences, perhaps they felt something similar, and that immediately fosters this profound sense of shared humanity. It's in those moments of shared vulnerability that the shame begins to dissolve. It can't survive empathy.
That's where empathy comes in.
Right.
It sounds like empathy is the key that unlocks that shared humanity and dissolves the shame.
Absolutely. Empathy is crucial in this emotional landscape. It involves recognizing and honoring our shared humanity. Recognizing that beneath our individual stories and struggles, we are all fundamentally trying to navigate life's complexities.
Seeing the common ground.
Yes, it allows us to connect on a deeper level because it affirms we are not alone in our struggles. Our pain, our fears, our joys, they're universal human experiences. And importantly, empathy, in Brown's view, is about being present and understanding someone's pain and experiences without judgment.
Not trying to fix it.
Exactly. It is not about fixing someone's problem or offering unsolicited advice or trying to make them feel better quickly. It's simply about holding space, saying implicitly or explicitly, I see you, I hear you, and I understand that feeling. You're not alone.
Just being with someone in their struggle.
Yes. Accepting vulnerability, then, isn't just about your own emotional journey. It profoundly fosters deeper, more meaningful relationships built on trust and authenticity. When we are vulnerable, we create a safe space for others to do the same. And that fosters that crucial shared humanity and empathy that are the bedrock of genuine connection. It transforms isolation into belonging.
It's a powerful cycle.
Yeah.
Vulnerability allows for connection, which builds empathy, which lessens shame, and that whole process takes immense courage.
And how does this connect back to resilience? You mentioned vulnerability allows for acknowledgement. Does vulnerability actually build resilience?
Yes, it absolutely does.
Yeah.
In a really profound way. Think about it. Confronting challenges and adversity often leaves individuals feeling exposed, uncertain, maybe even fragile.
However, our sources show that those who embrace their vulnerabilities during tough times are far better equipped to build resilience.
Okay.
Because vulnerability allows for the honest acknowledgement of pain and struggle. And that acknowledgement is actually the first essential step towards healing and overcoming hardship.
You can't heal what you don't acknowledge.
Exactly. If you deny the pain, if you pretend it's not there, you can't truly address it, learn from it, or move through it effectively. It's like trying to navigate a dark room with your eyes tightly shut because you're afraid of what you might see. Acknowledging the darkness, your fear, your uncertainty, that's what allows you to start feeling around for the light switch.
That's a great image, acknowledging the darkness to find the light.
And this brings us to Charles Darwin's timeless wisdom, a quote that resonates so powerfully here. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change.
Responsiveness to change. Adaptability.
Exactly. It highlights the critical importance of adaptation and flexibility. And the South African study we just discussed powerfully confirms this, doesn't it? The individual's positive mental health and spirituality, which often requires a willingness to acknowledge uncertainty and imperfection, a kind of vulnerability and openness to something beyond oneself, assisted their adaptation to the unprecedented pandemic challenges. And that led ultimately to resilient outcomes.
So their openness helped them adapt.
Yes. This idea of responsiveness to change is a core thread connecting resilience and vulnerability. It's not about being impervious to pain or pretending to have all the answers. It's about being open enough to adapt, to learn, to grow, and to respond effectively to whatever life throws your way, rather than rigidly resisting it or shutting down. That openness, that willingness to be affected and to learn, is a form of vulnerability that fuels true dynamic resilience.
That's a fantastic bridge between these ideas. So we've defined them: resilience, well-being, vulnerability. We've seen how they interact and reinforce each other. Now, here's where it gets really interesting for you, our listener. How can we actually build and strengthen these capacities in our daily lives?
Yes, the practical application.
Exactly. Our sources offer concrete, actionable strategies. And it seems like a great place to start is with something called self-compassion.
Yes, absolutely. Cultivating these qualities is very much a skill. It's like a muscle that can be strengthened through practice. It's not just some innate trait you're born with or not.
A skill we can learn. Good news.
Definitely. And self-compassion is indeed a foundational strategy. It really underpins many of these capacities we've been talking about.
So what exactly is self-compassion? It sounds a bit like self-love or maybe self-esteem, but is it different somehow?
It's related, but it's more precise. And in many ways, it's actually more stable than just self-love or self-esteem, which can sometimes fluctuate based on, external achievements or validation from others. Oh, okay. So it's less dependent on success.
Exactly. According to Kristen Neff, who's a leading researcher in this field, self-compassion is an emotion regulation strategy. It's characterized by self-kindness, particularly after you've made a mistake, experienced a failure, or faced rejection.
Self-kindness when things go wrong.
Yes. Think of it as treating yourself with the same warmth, the same understanding, patience, and non-judgmental support that you would instinctively offer to a good friend who is struggling or going through a really tough time.
We're often so much harder on ourselves than on our friends, aren't we?
Incredibly so. And self-compassion works by buffering against that self-critical, ruminative process, that relentless loop of negative judgmental thought that can trap us after a setback.
Oh yeah, the downward spiral.
That's the one. It can spiral into anxiety or depression.
No.
Self-compassion helps stop that spiral.
How does it do that? What are the components? Neff identifies 3 primary components of self-compassion, along with their crucial counterparts, the things we tend to do instead. First, there's self-kindness versus its opposite, self-judgment.
Kindness versus judgment. Okay.
This is about actively being gentle and understanding with yourself, offering yourself comfort and care rather than being harsh, critical, or dismissive when you're suffering or feel inadequate.
So instead of thinking, I'm such an idiot for messing that up.
Right. It's more like thinking, wow, that was tough. It's okay, everyone makes mistakes. I'll learn from this. What can I do differently next time? It's a supportive inner voice.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the second component?
Second, we have common humanity versus isolation.
Common humanity.
This is the profound understanding that all people struggle, all people make mistakes, all people experience suffering. It's a universal aspect of the human condition. It's not just you.
So recognizing you're not alone in your imperfection.
Exactly. This perspective connects us. It reminds us that we are part of a larger human experience, rather than feeling uniquely alone or flawed in our pain. When you trip and fall, literally or metaphorically, self-judgment might scream, only you would be so clumsy.
Right. Why am I like this?
But common humanity gently says, yep, that's what being human looks like sometimes. Everyone stumbles. It happens.
That feels much kinder. And less isolating. Okay, what's the third part?
And third, there's mindfulness versus over-identification.
Mindfulness, we hear that word a lot too. How does it fit here?
Here, it involves being aware of the present moment and your feelings without getting completely consumed, fixated, or swept away by the negative thoughts and emotions.
So acknowledging the feeling without becoming the feeling.
Beautifully put. It's about observing your pain with clarity rather than getting totally caught up in the dramatic story of your pain. It's acknowledging, okay, I'm feeling really sad right now, without immediately adding, and I'm going to be sad forever, and I'm terrible for feeling this way, and nothing will ever get better.
Right, stopping the narrative spiral. Just observing. Sadness is present.
Precisely. Acknowledging it without judgment and without letting it define your entire reality.
So it's about being kind to yourself, remembering everyone's struggles, and observing your feelings without getting lost in them. That sounds incredibly grounding and practical. And what are the documented benefits of actually cultivating this approach? Does it really make a difference?
Oh, absolutely. The profound benefits are incredibly well documented in research. Self-compassion is strongly associated with lower levels of psychopathology.
Meaning fewer mental health issues.
Exactly. A significant reduction in symptoms of depression, anxiety, and stress. A major meta-analysis, which combines results from many studies, found a correlation of 0.54 between self-compassion and psychopathology.
Wow, negative 0.54. That's a really strong negative association.
It's remarkably strong. Conversely, it's linked to higher levels of well-being, including cognitive well-being, how well you think and process information, and positive affect, which is experiencing positive emotions. The correlation there was 0.47 in meta-analyses.
So it reduces the bad stuff and increases the good stuff.
Pretty much. It's not just about feeling better psychologically. It's almost like you're rewiring your brain. When you practice self-compassion, you're actively building this mental buffer. Unlike self-criticism, which digs the hole deeper, self-compassion stops those negative thought spirals from taking root and blossoming into full-blown anxiety or depression.
Like having an internal shock absorber for emotional bumps in the road.
That's a perfect way to think about it, an emotional shock absorber.
That's incredible. Does it affect us physically too?
Yes, and this is fascinating. The benefits extend even to our physiology and neurobiology. Higher self-compassion leads to a measurably lower stress response.
Lower stress response. How?
For example, studies show a reduced systolic blood pressure and a lower heart rate when individuals with high self-compassion experience social stress, like having to give a speech in public or receiving criticism.
So their body literally reacts less intensely to stress.
Exactly. And studies using fMRI brain scans have even shown less activity in the amygdala, that's the part of your brain associated with a threat response system, with fear when individuals with high self-compassion received negative feedback.
Less activity in the fear center.
Yes. It means they literally have a calmer brain response to criticism or setbacks. They're less likely to go into that full-blown fight or flight mode.
Wow. So imagine facing a tough deadline or getting challenging feedback at work.
Right. Without self-compassion, your heart might race, your palms sweat, your body is screaming, threat, danger. With self-compassion, that internal alarm bell doesn't ring quite so loudly or for so long.
You're still aware of the challenge, obviously.
Of course. But your body isn't launching a full-scale panic attack. And this isn't just about feeling calm in the moment. It's about reducing the actual physiological wear and tear on your cardiovascular system, your nervous system, over time. Chronic stress takes a toll. Self-compassion helps mitigate that toll.
That's fascinating. So it's not just a nice psychological concept, it's a measurable biological effect on how our bodies handle stress. That's truly incredible.
It really is powerful stuff. And self-compassion also acts as a significant protective factor in other ways.
Like how?
It significantly moderates the relationship between stress and depression. Meaning, if you experience stress, having self-compassion can lessen the likelihood or severity of it triggering depressive symptoms. It acts as a buffer.
Okay, a buffer against depression.
Yes. It also buffers the relationship between things like weight or shape concerns and the development of disordered eating patterns. It acts as a crucial internal resource there, too.
So it helps protect against specific vulnerabilities.
Exactly. And it's been found generally to predict better emotional well-being and even improve social conflict resolution skills. Maybe because you're less defensive if you're kinder to yourself.
That makes sense. Less defensive, more open.
And here's the best part. The truly empowering insight we mentioned earlier. Self-compassion is a learnable skill, not a permanent trait you either have or don't.
Learnable. That's key.
Absolutely key. This means anyone, regardless of their past experiences or how loud their current internal critic is, can actively cultivate it and reap these profound benefits. You can literally train your brain to be kinder to yourself.
That is fantastic news. So, okay, how do we learn it? What are some of the effective interventions or practices that our sources suggest for cultivating self-compassion and, by extension, our overall well-being and resilience?
Great question. One critical component, deeply rooted in Buddhist practices but now widely used in secular contexts, is mindfulness meditation.
Mindfulness again. How does it help build self-compassion specifically?
Well, as we touched on, mindfulness involves being intentionally attentive to the present moment, observing thoughts, feelings, bodily sensations without judgment. This practice offers significant neurobiological benefits that support self-compassion.
Like the brain changes you mentioned.
Exactly. Research shows greater activity in brain areas related to emotion regulation, like the prefrontal cortex and the anterior cingulate cortex. And as we said, less activity in the amygdala, the threat center. Collectively, these changes suggest mindfulness is highly beneficial for literally reshaping your brain's emotional regulation capacities. It helps you respond to stress thoughtfully rather than just reacting automatically. And that non-judgmental observation is key to self-compassion.
Okay, so mindfulness trains the brain for better emotional regulation. Are there specific programs?
Yes, a very well-known and researched program that incorporates mindfulness is mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR. It was developed by John Kabat-Zinn.
MBSR, I've heard of that.
It typically involves an 8-week course and includes formal practices like deep and focused breathing exercises, body scan meditations where you systematically bring awareness to different parts of your body, noticing sensations without judgment, and even mindful walking or mindful eating, where you bring full attention to the sensory experience of simple activities.
Bringing awareness to everyday things.
Exactly. And meta-analyses examining MBSR have shown really large effects on reducing stress, moderate effects on anxiety and depression, and importantly for our discussion, significant increases in self-compassion across diverse populations, healthcare professionals, students, corporate employees, you name it.
Wow. And do you need to do the full 8-week course to benefit?
That's the great thing. Even brief practices help significantly. Studies have found that just 10 to 20 minutes of daily mindfulness meditation for as little as 2 weeks significantly decreased stress and increased both mindfulness and self-compassion in college students.
10 to 20 minutes a day for 2 weeks. That's achievable for most people.
Absolutely. You don't need to dedicate hours a day to start seeing real benefits. Even small, consistent efforts can make a profound difference. It's really about consistency over duration, especially when starting out.
So even short bursts can make a difference. That's really encouraging for busy people trying to fit this into their lives. What other interventions are effective besides general mindfulness or MBSR?
Another effective intervention, often delivered online, which makes it accessible, is called Mindful-Based Compassionate Living, or MBCL.
MBCL.
This program typically consists of around 8 modules over 8 weeks, guiding participants through a structured curriculum focusing specifically on both mindfulness and compassion practices. Studies have shown it successfully increased self-compassion and significantly reduced self-criticism. And importantly, the positive effects were sustained for at least 6 months after the intervention ended, indicating pretty good long-term benefits.
Sustained effects are key.
Okay.
What else?
Then there's loving-kindness meditation, which is sometimes called meta-meditation. This practice is specifically proven to increase self-compassion and decrease self-criticism.
Loving kindness.
Yeah.
How does that work?
It works by intentionally cultivating feelings of warmth, kindness, and compassion towards oneself and others. You might sit quietly and silently repeat phrases directed first towards yourself, like, may I be filled with loving kindness, may I be well, may I be peaceful and at ease, may I be happy.
Sending kindness inwards first.
Yes. Then you gradually extend these wishes outwards to loved ones, then to neutral persons, someone you see regularly but don't know well, like a cashier, then even to difficult persons, and eventually to all beings everywhere.
Expanding the circle of compassion.
Exactly. And interestingly, in one study, even non-meditative methods like loving-kindness coloring, where participants colored a mandala design while focusing positive intentions and these kinds of phrases on various people, yielded positive results in increasing self-compassion.
Coloring with kind intentions. That's unique.
Isn't it? It suggests that the intention behind the practice, the active cultivation of goodwill and kindness, is profoundly powerful in itself, even if you're just quietly focusing those intentions while doing a simple, calming activity.
That's such a unique and accessible idea. What about something even simpler that anyone can try immediately, maybe related to how we talk to ourselves? We all have that inner monologue running.
Ah, yes. That's a profoundly powerful one and incredibly practical. Changing self-talk. It's simpler, perhaps, than formal meditation, yet incredibly effective because it taps into our cognitive biases.
How does changing self-talk work?
Researchers like Ethan Kross and his colleagues have found something fascinating. When individuals talk to themselves in the second person using you, or the third person using their own name.
Like talking to yourself instead of as yourself.
Exactly. For example, saying, you can do this, when facing a challenge, or addressing themselves by their own name, like, Lauren, it's okay that your grant application was rejected. This is part of the process. Figure out the next step.
Instead of, I failed because my grant was rejected, I'm such a failure.
Precisely. They found that using you or their name led people to appraise challenges as less threatening and less overwhelming compared to those who use the first-person I self-talk.
Why does that work? Why does that distance help?
The theory is that it creates psychological distance from the negative event or the intense emotion. It's almost as if you're giving advice to a supportive friend rather than berating yourself from the inside.
Accessing that external perspective.
Exactly. Think about it. When a friend comes to you upset about a mistake they made, you don't usually say, "You're so stupid. How could you do that?"
No, you'd be supportive. It's okay. We all mess up. What can you learn?
Precisely. We are often far kinder, more compassionate, and more rational towards others than we are towards ourselves. This simple trick of using you or your name allows us to tap into that external, more objective and supportive perspective for ourselves. It shifts you from being completely immersed in the emotional intensity of the problem to observing it and offering yourself guidance just as you would a loved one. That's so smart. Like coaching yourself through a tough moment instead of just drowning in the feeling.
Okay, so pulling this all together, for our listener, what are some really practical, actionable strategies for cultivating vulnerability, resilience, and well-being in daily life? Things they can try regardless of their role.
Okay, let's get concrete. Our sources provide some excellent, actionable strategies for you to implement, generally across the board. Make it a practice to engage in regular mindfulness or loving-kindness meditation. As we said, even 10-20 minutes makes a difference. There are tons of free guided meditations online YouTube, apps like Insight Timer, websites like KristenNeffSelfCompassion.org, making it incredibly accessible.
So resources are readily available.
Definitely. You could also try journaling about your feelings, but with that specific self-compassionate twist we talked about. After you write down your struggles or mistakes, consciously respond to those negative feelings right there on the page with kindness and understanding, as if you're writing a supportive letter back to yourself or to a dear friend.
Writing with compassion.
Yes. And, as we just discussed, actively practice talking to yourself in the second or third person. You've got this, or, okay, your name, take a breath. When experiencing failure, rejection, or just a tough moment. See how that feels different from the usual I talk.
Try shifting the pronoun.
Exactly. And crucially, make an effort to surround yourself with friends and a community who also exhibit self-compassion and empathy. That positive influence and supportive environment can be immense. We absorb things from the people around us.
Choose your circle wisely.
Very much so. And, of course, if negative self-talk is pervasive, really harsh, and truly interfering with your daily life and happiness, seeking counseling or therapy is always a valuable and courageous option. Exploring these patterns with a professional can be incredibly helpful.
Absolutely. Don't hesitate to seek professional support. Okay, what about specific tips for students? They often face unique pressures, rejections, failures.
Yes, students are a key group. Some powerful strategies include proactively preparing for potential rejection or failure, not in a negative, expecting the worst way, but by creating a compassionate contingency plan.
Like what?
For example, telling yourself beforehand, okay, I've worked hard on this paper. It might get rejected by the specific journal, and that's okay if it does. It happens to everyone. If so, I will allow myself to feel disappointed. Then I'll read the feedback carefully, learn from it, revise thoughtfully, and find another suitable journal to submit to. This is a common part of the academic journey, not a reflection of my ultimate worth or ability.
Planning for the bump with kindness.
Exactly. Also, actively express compassion to your peers when they make mistakes or struggle. Maybe saying something simple like, that was a good guess in class. I didn't know the answer either, but it was brave of you to share your idea. Or, yeah, that exam was really tough for me too. Fostering a compassionate environment helps everyone.
Paying it forward.
Yes. Practice periodic, brief moments of mindfulness, especially during stressful times like exams or deadlines. Even just 5 minutes stepping outside to focus on your senses, or doing a short guided breath meditation before a big exam can make a profound difference in managing anxiety.
Little resets.
Little resets. Create healthy boundaries with your schedule. Learn to say no sometimes without feeling guilty. recognizing that taking breaks and self-care are essential for sustained effort, not selfish indulgences.
Boundaries are crucial.
And critically, reach out. Reach out to supportive friends, family, or professors who can offer words of compassion and perspective when you inevitably make a mistake or face a setback. Don't try to just power through it alone in silence. Connection helps.
Don't go it alone. Great advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's all about being a little gentler with yourself and others, building that supportive ecosystem. Now, what about for those in leadership roles? Professors, managers, team leads. How do these principles translate when you're responsible for others?
For professors and leaders, these principles are equally vital, perhaps even more so, because you have the capacity to significantly influence the culture and psychological safety around you. Your actions set the tone.
Okay, so how can leaders foster this?
You can explicitly highlight the value of self-compassion. Maybe mention it in your syllabus or talk about it verbally at the beginning of a semester or a new project, setting a compassionate, growth-oriented tone from the outset. Let people know mistakes are expected and okay.
Setting the expectation.
Yes. And crucially, model self-compassion when you make mistakes in real time. Don't try to hide your imperfections or errors. Be transparent.
Walk the talk.
Absolutely. For example, if you misstate a fact during a lecture or a team meeting, simply acknowledge it openly and kindly. A brief, "My apologies, I misspoke there. The correct information is actually X. Thanks for catching that," rather than getting defensive, blaming someone else, or trying to awkwardly cover it up. This models vulnerability and fallibility beautifully.
Showing it's okay to be human.
Exactly. You can also prime other students or team members to approach constructive feedback in a self-compassionate way before delivering tests, paper feedback, or performance reviews.
How'd you do that?
You might say something like, "Remember, this feedback is designed to help you learn and grow. It's not a judgment of your inherent worth or talent." It's perfectly normal to feel a bit defensive or disappointed at first when receiving feedback. Be kind to yourself as you process it and focus on what you can learn.
Framing the feedback with compassion.
Precisely. Share research on the benefits of self-compassion, maybe in your classes or team meetings. Make the case for its practical value in reducing stress, improving performance, and fostering well-being. Help people understand why it matters.
Educate them on the benefits.
Yes. Actively address judgmental statements or overly critical self-talk when you hear it from others. Gently redirect towards a more compassionate and constructive perspective. Emphasize experiences of common humanity. Remind everyone that we all face similar struggles, challenges, and moments of self-doubt, especially during difficult times like the pandemic or navigating a complex project. Normalize the struggle.
Remind people they're not alone.
Yes. And you could even lead brief mindfulness moments periodically during a class session or a meeting. Perhaps before a big test, a challenging discussion, or a creative brainstorming session, just to help everyone ground themselves, center, and access their inner resources. Even just a minute of guided breathing can shift the energy in a room.
Great practical tips for leaders. And that's actually a perfect segue into our final area here, vulnerability in leadership and organizations.
Yes.
It might seem counterintuitive to some, right? Leaders are often expected to be stoic, decisive, unwavering, always presenting that polished, perfect front. But our sources suggest vulnerability is actually a kind of superpower in the workplace.
It really is a paradigm shift. While leadership has traditionally been associated with that unwavering confidence and projecting absolute certainty, Pat Waters, who is a leading expert in HR and human capital management, challenges this deeply ingrained notion head-on.
What does she say?
She states unequivocally that vulnerability is the #1 key to building trust in the workplace, and she calls it a powerful display of strength, not weakness.
Powerful display of strength. I like that reframing.
Brené Brown echoes this completely, asserting that vulnerability is a cornerstone of truly effective, courageous leadership. When leaders dare to acknowledge their own imperfections, their uncertainties, their fears, or even their past mistakes, it sets a powerful example for the entire team.
How does that example help the team?
That authenticity makes teams feel psychologically safer. Safer to express their own ideas, even the half-baked ones. Safer to admit when they've made an error without fear of blame. Safer to voice concerns or dissent without fear of judgment or reprisal. And that safety ultimately leads to greater innovation, better problem-solving, and higher productivity. It creates an environment where people feel comfortable bringing their whole authentic selves to work, not just the polished work persona.
So it's not just about leaders being seen as human, but about actively cultivating an environment where everyone feels safe enough to be human, to be imperfect, and crucially, to take creative risks without the fear of being shamed or punished if things don't work out perfectly.
Exactly. That psychological safety is key. And this openness fostered by leader vulnerability directly builds a culture of trust. Trust is the absolute bedrock of any successful team or organization.
Makes sense? No trust, no real collaboration.
Right. When leaders show vulnerability, they implicitly communicate that they trust their team with their genuine selves, that they don't feel the need to pretend to be perfect or have all the answers. This reciprocity of trust, I trust you enough to be real so you can trust me, dramatically enhances communication, collaboration, and team cohesion.
People feel more connected to a leader like that.
Absolutely. People are simply more likely to take calculated risks, to propose new, potentially game-changing ideas, and to openly share challenges or bad news early when they feel supported and trusted by their leader. And that kind of open communication and risk-taking is absolutely crucial for organizational success and adaptation in today's rapidly changing world.
Can you give an example? You mentioned brainstorming earlier.
Yeah, imagine a team brainstorming session. If the leader has previously admitted to a past project failing or not knowing an answer, team members are far more likely to offer up wild ideas, ask dumb questions, or admit they don't know something, rather than just trying to appear infallible or only offering safe suggestions. That's where breakthroughs happen.
That makes perfect sense. Do we have any real-world case studies of leaders who embody this?
Yes, our sources point to some excellent examples. Consider Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft.
Okay, Microsoft, big company.
Huge. And historically, Microsoft had a reputation for a very rigid, competitive, somewhat unforgiving stack ranking culture. Nadella came in and openly shared personal challenges, including his experiences as a parent of children with disabilities. He spoke consistently about the importance of empathy and having a growth mindset, being willing to learn and adapt.
So he brought his personal vulnerability into his leadership role.
He did. His willingness to share his own struggles and his vision for a more empathetic workplace helped fundamentally shift Microsoft's corporate culture. He moved it towards one of greater inclusiveness, psychological safety, and compassion. By prioritizing vulnerability and empathy, Nadella created an environment that encouraged employees to bring their whole selves to work, to learn from mistakes rather than hide them, and to collaborate more effectively across silos.
And what was the result?
This cultural shift is widely credited with revitalizing Microsoft. It sparked incredible innovation across its products and services. Look at their cloud business, for example. And it significantly boosted employee morale and engagement. It really transformed a somewhat stagnant giant back into a dynamic, forward-thinking leader.
Yeah.
All starting, in many ways, from a place of empathy and vulnerability at the top.
That's a massive impact from one person's willingness to be open and authentic, setting that tone. What about Howard Schultz at Starbucks? His leadership style also seems relevant here.
Howard Schultz, the former CEO of Starbucks, offers another compelling example. During various crises that Starbucks faced over the years, whether it was the major economic downturn impacting consumer spending or specific brand challenges they encountered, he did not shy away from sharing his concerns and uncertainties with his employees, his partners, as Starbucks calls them.
He didn't put on a brave face and pretend everything was fine.
No, he didn't present a facade of invincibility. Instead, he leveraged his vulnerability. He spoke openly about the difficult decisions that had to be made, the uncertain future they faced. He shared his personal anxieties about the situation, but also his deep commitment to the company's core values and its people.
So honesty about the challenges, but also commitment.
Exactly. This transparency and openness allowed him to rally his employees around common goals. It fostered a really strong sense of unity and shared purpose during incredibly challenging times. People felt like he was in it with them.
And the outcome.
This genuine openness translated into deep trust and loyalty from his employees. People went the extra mile because they felt seen and trusted. And that loyalty, in turn, contributed immensely to Starbucks' growth and resilience, enabling them to overcome significant obstacles and emerge stronger time and again. He showed them that vulnerability and strength could coexist.
It really builds that connection, doesn't it? Knowing your leader is human, too.
It absolutely does. And beyond these organizational benefits, embracing vulnerability also fuels the leader's personal growth. It's not just good for the team, it's good for the leader.
How so?
By leaning into vulnerability, leaders develop greater self-awareness and emotional intelligence. They learn to navigate their own fears, their insecurities, their decision-making processes with more honesty and clarity, which in turn makes them more empathetic, more authentic, and ultimately more effective in their roles.
So that helps them understand themselves better.
Yes. This deeper self-awareness can lead to more thoughtful, more nuanced decision-making. And it cultivates far deeper, more meaningful connections with their teams because they're leading from a place of genuine integrity, not just positional authority.
Leading from integrity. That's powerful. And it's not just about internal team dynamics, is it? Our sources also mention how organizational vulnerability impacts how organizations communicate externally, particularly in times of crisis or failure.
Yes, exactly. That concept of organizational vulnerability highlights a crucial point that goes beyond just individual leaders. It looks at the organization as a whole. Our sources emphasize that information failures are a significant contributing factor to many organizational disasters.
Information failures. Like cover-ups.
Sometimes, yes. Or just miscommunication, suppression of bad news because people are afraid to deliver it, or a lack of transparency between departments. These failures frequently lead to poor decisions being made, or critical delays in responding to problems, which can have catastrophic outcomes.
You can think of examples: major industrial accidents, public health crises.
Exactly. Where critical information was siloed, ignored, or not shared openly and quickly enough. Effective communication, which vulnerability fosters through creating that openness and trust we talked about, is absolutely crucial for timely and sound decision-making. It enhances situation awareness across all levels of an organization, facilitates seamless team coordination, and fosters truly effective leadership throughout the entire system, not just at the very top.
So being vulnerable at an organizational level means being transparent.
Yes, transparent about challenges, acknowledging uncertainties openly, being willing to receive all information, even the uncomfortable truths, not just the information that fits a preconceived narrative or makes leadership look good. It's about having the collective courage as an organization to face uncomfortable realities head on. And ultimately, that transparency and willingness to learn from mistakes makes the entire organization more adaptable and more resilient in the long run. #outrag_outtrip.
Wow. So what does this all mean for you listening right now? We've truly done a deep dive today, haven't we? Into the profound and often quite surprising connections between vulnerability, resilience, and well-being.
We really have.
We've seen how resilience allows us to adapt and bounce back, maybe even bounce forward, not as some fixed innate trait, but as a dynamic, cultivable process.
Yeah, something we can build.
We've explored how well-being is so much more than just fleeting happiness, how it encompasses deep meaning, purpose, and functioning well even when things are tough.
The hedonic and the eudaimonic working together.
Exactly. And we've learned how vulnerability, far from being a weakness to be hidden, is actually the courageous path. The path to deeper connection, to profound creativity, and to powerful innovation.
Indeed. That compelling research from South Africa during the pandemic really hammered home how bolstering resilience can significantly augment well-being, especially through cultivating that sense of meaning, purpose, and faith, even in the face of widespread adversity.
Right, those internal anchors matter so much.
Immensely. And the transformative work of Brené Brown, combined with those real-world examples from truly influential leaders like Satya Nadella at Microsoft and Howard Schultz at Starbucks, it clearly demonstrates how embracing vulnerability fosters trust, sparks innovation, and drives both organizational success and deep personal growth for everyone involved.
It really feels like cultivating these qualities, vulnerability, resilience, self-compassion, well-being, isn't just for facing those grand life-altering challenges.
No, not at all.
It's for enriching our everyday lives, our relationships, our work, our communities, making them more authentic, more fulfilling, and ultimately more robust and adaptable.
It's about building a life, and maybe even organizations and communities where you don't just survive the inevitable difficulties,
Right.
but where you can truly flourish even when things get tough, where challenges become opportunities for growth and deeper connection.
Flourishing, not just surviving. That's the goal.
Which brings us to a final thought, maybe a question for you, our listener, to sit with.
Okay.
If embracing vulnerability truly is the birthplace of creativity, innovation, and courage, and if fostering resilience through things like self-compassion and finding meaning is key to our overall well-being, what small, perhaps slightly uncomfortable, but courageous act of vulnerability or self-kindness could you take today, or maybe this week?
Just one small act.
One small step. How might taking that step, however small it feels, open yourself up just a little to new possibilities? to deeper connections in your own life.
Hmm.
And perhaps, just perhaps, how might doing so not only benefit you, but also ripple outwards? How might it affect those around you, making your corner of the world just a little bit more resilient, a little more authentic, and a little more genuinely connected?